Hey, what's good with the YouTube? Hopefully you guys are having a great Wednesday, man. It's your boy Rojo, joined by the one and only, the big homie Flacco. And today we are smashing and dashing and sliding on through with.
Little bit of energy. That's right.
So we've been talking about the WACC 100 situation, man, and his unprofessional, to say the very least, comments, very controversial comments he made. And we just want to reiterate that, man, that individual is an individual at the end of the day. He's not speaking for nobody. I've talked to a lot of brothers as well that feel the same way. It's like he doesn't represent what most of us think and this and that. And instead of focusing on negative and all that kind of things that go along with loose lips, kind of, that could be taken to some other level, we'll share with you guys, man, about some positive interactions that we've had as a group, as individuals, with the brothers, because we don't got nothing against the brothers either. All we're saying is that one individual should have thought before he spoke. So without all that, said and done, what's up, Flacco, man? What do you got to say?
Man, as we already know, man, Mr. WACC 100, man, rocked the airways with his comments the other day, man. And, one thing, like we've already reiterated over and over again, and one thing is to have a dislike towards Nortenos because of your past relationships. I get it. But when you cross those boundaries and make racial overtones, it just becomes a bigger issue, man. But we felt that we need to push a positive message, man, and use the example of what's occurred up north between the black and brown over the last, say, 30, 40 years in having a working relationship. Now, don't get it misconstrued. The same way that Norteños used to bang on Norteños, we used to go at it with Africanos as a kid. You know what I'm saying? My neighborhood in general, we used to go at it with certain black hoods back in the days, man. Get off, shoot at each other, fight, man. But it was never racially motivated. It was always hood issues. The same way we were going at it with Norteños was the same way we'd go out at it sometimes with Filipinos, blacks, Asians, and so forth. As we evolved into the 2000s, a lot of stuff that was laid, the foundation that was laid behind the walls with the working relationship that we had, not we, I'm talking about the NF Norteños in general, have with the African brothers, such as, the BGF, Crips, Damus. I've been to so many different prisons. Now, I've been in a whole pod in the shoe where I was the only Norteño, and it was some Crips that looked after me, or some Damu cats, or some Jamas, or some Kumi cats. So don't get it misconstrued with our actions of how we're pointing this picture out just on one individual by his misactions. I get everything he said. I'm not going to keep on going over and over again about it. But, as times changed in the 90s, you had a big push in the Bay Area and as well as in Sacramento. You see a lot of working relationships with the black and brown communities out there. 17 Reasons was a prime example. That was groundbreaking. You know what I mean? As well as Dark Room Familia. They set the standard for other people to follow. And throughout the years, yes, there's always going to be conflict. There are always going to be issues with different groups out there in the streets. That's going to happen. Norteños go at it with Norteños still from time to time. You know what I mean? Those issues are going to happen. But on an overall scale of things, you're going to see a lot of love that occurs from all these groups as opposed to the hate. You know what I'm saying? And you're starting to see prime examples that have happened over the years, man. Like, we've been places like in the 6-yard back in the days where it was okay for an Africano to hold post for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? While we were busting down, or, you know what I mean, even using the baño. You know what I mean? There's been times where we've had working relationships where if an Africano wasn't going to the store, here's a paquete, vice versa. So there's always been a cool relationship for the grander scheme of things. You know what I mean? And even within this, right, having relationships as Norteños with the black group segments, it's also done on an individual basis, man. Because one thing within the bylaws, right, of the bonds, we already know they're to aid and assist all those worthy to the cause, minority groups, land descent, and all that, man. In any group, it doesn't matter what racial background you have, what culture, what heritage, where you're even geographically from. If you're worthy to the cause, you're going to be embraced, right? Yeah. So the positive things that you've seen up north and the interactions that you've had with the Norteños and Sureños are starting to evolve in different directions. You're seeing a lot less disrespect. One time you see disrespect is you get these trolls online that want to say, Buster, scrap this, Buster, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know what I mean? But they're keyboard warriors. Grown men that are doing this grown men stuff can see way above that. And it's up to people as individuals to look at people as individuals. Don't judge anybody by a particular group, right? Because that's where you start to lose in the end run. You know, for a lot of these groups for a while, okay, if you're a Sudanese or you're white, you're supposed to affiliate with each other. We've seen how well that worked out down the line. The same thing with the Africanos. If you're an Africano, okay, Northern, you're supposed to assist. We've seen how that worked out down the line. You got to judge people by their character, by their worth, by their deeds, and what they're worth. And throughout the years, man, in a lot of situations, man, you know, I'll keep it 100. Not every African brother was always worthy. Not every Norteño was worthy either, though. You get what I'm saying? So it's on a base-to-base knowledge, but there is good people out there from all sides, all groups, whether they're active or inactive, that are good men that are going to push a positive message, that want to help people out or push the positive agenda the right way.
Yeah, I'm going to share a little story with you guys, man. I've told it before, man, but this was a long time ago when we were first starting out. I was in Susanville, and the administration had me down as an other. The Northerners went on lockdown for some weapons and some confidential information, stuff like that. I'm out on the yard. I am the only Northerner on the yard. There's about 112 Sureños, if I'm not mistaken. And you got to remember, this is pre-end of hostilities. These weren't really the friendliest of times. These were dangerous times, you know what I mean, to be on a 3 and 4 yard, and et cetera. The Crips came to my building every day without me asking. You know what I mean? I'm going out to the yard when the door opens. The Crips would come to my building and escort me everywhere I went. The brothers from Vallejo had a big car in Susanville at the time. The 707 car was about 15 to 20 individuals deep. They escorted me when the Crips weren't. You know, so they had my back. You know what I mean? And don't get it misconstrued. You know, history says there was never no official we're on the same team. It was just working together toward common enemies. You know what I mean? Look at me. Yeah, granted, I'm a Northerner, and that takes precedence over everything. When you get into the gang life, into the politics in prison, it don't matter what color you are, it matters what politics you're representing. Be it a white Sureño, white Norteño, Mexican Crip, it doesn't matter. Those are the politics you align with, and that's how you're going to be looked at. So not only being very, very fair-skinned and of a different car, them dudes didn't want to see me get slaughtered by over 100-something Southerners, knowing that there's only 25 Crips, knowing there's only 17 brothers from Vallejo. They were putting themselves at risk to protect me. It ended up I didn't need any kind of assistance because, man, them Sureños weren't even tripping on me. You know what I mean? For whatever reason, they didn't care. Maybe because I was an 18-year-old kid, I wasn't no threat. They ain't going to earn no stripes, beating me up when there's 112 of them. I don't know the reason. But things like this, man, it shows that people can get along from different group segments, from different ethnicities, and there's always going to be good and bad in every group. Now, when one individual says something, especially ignorant stuff, bro, that doesn't reflect their whole segment. You know, there might be a Latino that drops the Maete word. There might be a black dude that does this, or a white dude that says that, or whatever the case might be. That's an individual, man. And you can't allow one individual's moment of complete idiot stuff, man, to alter your views on people as a whole. That's my little point. I know it came out messed up. Nobody's ever done nothing to me that I didn't have coming because of my color. You know what I mean? Like, I've been in some weird situations, bro, and it's always been political. It's always been business. You know, have people thought that stuff? Maybe, but I've never heard it. You know, it's not always about that, contrary to what's being pushed in today's society.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that, man. You know, the interesting thing, I'm going to touch on this, right? Like, without going into the history, we did a history about the BGF-NF relationships really early on. We may do another one again just to recap on it. But a lot of that laid the forefront, man, for us that were going into the joint in the 90s. We got to remember, around the early 90s is when they started sending a lot of people to prison at that time. The 3-strike law, they started sending people into prison over dope cases, burglaries, robberies. They just had a whole different, you know what I mean, agenda within the prison system and the judicial system that locked a lot of people up that back in the 80s and 70s would have never got locked up. Yeah. Therefore, when you hit the system, right, I remember going in as a young gang member, you know what I mean? And I'm keeping it 100. I used to funk with everybody, Norteños, Crips, Bloods, you know what I mean? Whether black gangs, whatever you were, it didn't matter. You wanted it, you can get it. That was the mindset in the 90s. That was the gangbanging mentality. But when we got to the system, the first thing we were taught was to have a working relationship with the Africanos. And we were taught that we would be some places to where maybe we're only 20, 30 deep. And however, there may not be our allies, but they work in alliance with us. They share the yard with us. They share the showers. They share the TVs. There's a mutual respect, and there's going to be those that are going to be deemed worthy. For every 30 of them, you might find 2 or 3 that are going to seriously rock with you all day. And that's the truth of it. You're going to have those that don't really care or less. They're just civilians, or they just don't care. They're just convicts doing their time. But that was the mindset. And I've seen situations in the county jail where a homeboy and Africano got into it over some petty stuff, right? To where the next thing you know, you had 2 OGs. They had both of them disciplined, do their DPs together. That's the kind of relationship that you were starting to see it early in the 90s, based upon the fact of this new wave of individuals going to prison. You know what I mean? I want to say around 92, 93, 91, those years, you started having a lot of people had to go to prison. And you were taught to leave all that BS to the side because you had a bigger scale of enemies out in the system. Because it wasn't like you were going to a yard and there was 500 homeboys. It wasn't like I was going to Santa Clara County and 70% of the population is all Nortenos. You were going to a yard where you were the minority. So there was a mutual respect of learning how to coexist. And a lot of people took that attitude out when they got out of prison. They experienced these working relationships. The violence kind of started to scale down a little bit amongst these groups. And you started to see things out there in San Fran, Oakland, Hayward, different areas, Sacramento. You started to see a little bit better working relationships because you based it upon individuals. A lot of dudes that came out the joint. You can't answer for all these youngsters because out there in the streets, they still out there warring from time to time. San Jose, you got the homeboys going at it with the Crips because they killed the big homie son out there. Out there in Merced, they're having the same thing. Sacramento, you got Nortenos and other groups that are actually one hood that are rocking together out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is a prime example of how, you know what I mean? People need to learn to judge people as individuals. Whether you're Southside, Damu, Crip, from down south, up north, the Central Valley, there's going to be trash and good people in everyone that you meet, no matter what it is. You know what I mean? So there's a prime example there. And you know, let things be a stepping stone. I know we have a lot of people who wanted to take that message of what WACC 100 said, right? And use that to direct negative attention on all the African groups, all the Black groups.
Yeah.
I totally disagree. That's only one man's statements. And maybe there may be a few that agree with his statements. You leave it there. There's a lot of people who are on that grown man shit. If you haven't done nothing to me, you're not my enemy. The moment you have, the moment I have an issue with you. You know what I mean? And that's how things start to rock down there. Yes, there's been war. You know what I mean? County jail. I mean, they have reasons not to like the Southsiders, and the Southsiders have reasons not to like them. But there has been improved relationships. And if the Northerners in general could have improved relationships on the groups that they used to funk with, which were, you know, I mean, I'm gonna keep it real. Back in the days, 80s and 90s, we were going at it with Africanos out in the streets, bro. Just like they do down south. But it was because we needed to have an existing relationship with them in prison. A lot of people were going to Y, a lot of people were going to prison. They were getting laced up. They took that attitude out there to the streets. So now, hopefully, with all these end-all hostilities going on in prison, you know, people trying to push it, this is about money. It's about focus. It's about building your communities. You can live in the same hood and still try to coexist. Doesn't mean that there's not going to be funk from time to time. So that's just the reality of the streets, you know. But I mean, I think this is a kind of an important topic for people to take heed and take a step back and say, look, man, WACC 100 is just one individual. He doesn't speak for the whole collective. You know what I mean? He only speaks for himself and those that maybe have similar beliefs. But him having that platform, he has to be a little bit more responsible with his fucking actions and not loose at the lips.
Yeah, you know, throughout the years, man, you know, like you're talking about street beefs and stuff, man. Everybody knows, you know, where I'm from, Coco County. There's a lot of woods out there. There's a lot of different groups, man. There's Fame, there's NLR, there's Coco County, just as in general. There's this, there's that, there's skinhead groups. There's all these kind of groups. During the 90s, we were in prisons that I was at, Quentin, you know, other places. It was all bad between the homies and the white dudes. You know what I mean? And for a lot of times, it was worse for the homies and the white dudes than it was for the homies and the guys from down south. You know what I mean? At the same time, on the streets, bro, at our barbecues and stuff, there'd be 30 homeboys, 15 Coco County woods. You know what I mean? While we were getting along real good with the Black dudes at the time, on the streets, it was funky. 15 years later, it's the exact opposite. And that's why I say it's more so, in my experience, this is only Rojo's perspective, it's been about politics more than race. You know what I mean? You go some places, the woods look at you one certain type of way. When on the streets, they're the same dudes. They're all chilling with the homies, selling stuff together, drinking, chilling. Times
Yeah,
change. That's why I say it's always political, man. It always stems from something else. Yes, there are racist people in every damn group. There's no doubt about it. I don't. In my experience, though, it's been business.
you know
'Cause
what's
I don't
kind of
hate nobody, bro.
you know what's
It's
kind of
only
interesting
business.
with that comment, right? Is the street politics have a little bit more flexibility, but they could be a little bit more dangerous too.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, man, because you could be out there in street politics. There's been times where the homies have gone at it with MC clubs out in the streets, Africano groups, white groups, and everything. Once you hit the prison system, you have to leave that shit on hold. Then you could have shit going on in prison, straight get out, straight war. But once you get to the street, it's not no longer an issue. It's kind of just a trip how, prison runs the outside. We already know that. They dictate any implementations within the Hispanic groups. I will say that.
Yeah.
But the street politics, man, they can change a little bit. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But nowadays it's like it's a catch-22. Sometimes street politics can be affected merely by the prison politics. Someone comes out, has a hair in their ass, and wants to put a green light on this group. Then sometimes you have street politics that are dictated by those who've never even been to fucking prison over a female, over a debt that's owed. You know what I mean? It could be a whole variety of underlying factors.
Right.
And it never gets resolved. You know what I mean? There's been issues. I mean, look at the issue that happened with the homeboys in the Kumis back in Queen Mouse back in the days. That was over dead on the streets.
Right.
Someone took it upon themselves to take hands on a homie, and you already know what the repercussions of that. You never cross those boundaries. You know what I mean? So things today now it's kind of like the wild, wild west everywhere, bro, when it comes to street politics, because there's no longer any working relationships like there was back in the past. There's no longer a need for other groups. Everybody has laid their flag basically everywhere. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense on these prison yards. So now everything is based upon individual basis because you have homeboys doing transactions with Sureños. You know what I mean? You have homeboys doing transactions with Gavas. You have homeboys doing transactions with Africanos. It's all based upon the merit of the individual. And I think that's starting to occur down south as well. And I think the prime example is you can see what's going on up north for years because the homeboys have been doing dealings with the Africanos for a long time, solid dealings. There's been funk out there. You know what I mean? Look what happened with Mexican Mike. I mean, prime example. It's not always a working relationship, but there's been good relationships. There's also relationships out there in the Bay Area with Gavas. I mean, for them to be able to run and orchestrate their operations, they got to have some type of pipeline. A lot of times the homeboys are the ones with that pipeline out there. It is what it is. You know what I mean? This is just the reality of street politics versus prison politics. You know what I mean? Where beef and war, it doesn't go anywhere. There's no positive bias for funking with anybody. When there's get on the streets and these hoods are fighting each other or neighborhoods or blocks or gangs, because it's a little bit different when it comes to the groups up north that are of Black descent. They're less hood based. Unless you go to Sacramento and Stockton, you got hoods over there. But when you go to the Bay Area, it's a little bit different. It's more blocks and areas where people, you know what I mean, have their pipeline, they have their crew, they have their clique, as opposed to down south in other areas.
Yeah, it's been so different, bro. Just even like I remember one time being at a bar in Concord, man, and I was with a different group of homeboys from a different town, and they had issue with some brothers that I was cool with, and I ended up damn near being caught in the middle of that stuff. And that's how much, like you're saying, the streets have room to wiggle. While these dudes rock with us, and we're barbecuing together every weekend and going to bars and doing whatever we do, homeboys from right over the hill had an on-site thing with them. I happen to be with them, and I'm just like in the middle. Guns are coming out, people are getting knocked out, bottles busted over their head, and I'm just like, you know what I mean? It's different, man. In the pen, there's like a pretty big blanket that covers the politics, especially in one prison. The blanket might change a little bit to other prisons, man. In on the streets, bro, your best friend could be your other homeboy's worst enemy. It's just different, man.
Yeah.
It's streets, man. There's so many different kinds of politics on the streets, blocks, races, money, gang, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more moving parts going on, man, and things can get funky easy. And the message for today is don't allow one individual that says something dumb alter or make you have a poor image of everybody that's like that person. Because it's just not the way it is. I had an Aryan Brotherhood friend that I liked a lot, bro. He's dead now. He was AB. I'm supposed to hate them. I couldn't hate this dude. You know what I mean? We were never in a situation where we had to do something to one another. You know what I mean? We were on the streets and in the county behind glass, stuff like that. He was cool as hell. That BGF members I'm friends with. Every day I got 20 or 30 Serenos as well as big homies from down the way hollering at me. It's not always about race or gang or anything, man. It could just be about one dumbass individual, man. You know, don't don't judge a book by its cover. Don't make all the pages in the book are the same because they're different. No matter what group it is. We're past
Yeah.
that, man. It's 2021, man, almost 2022.
Yeah, okay, we got to push a positive message nowadays, man. I mean, you can't allow the system to dictate the future. A lot of times we allow this system that's been developed by the powers that be orchestrate the things that we're doing into the future. We need to change that system. You know what I mean? We need to change the relationships. And it's not going to be perfect. There's still going to be hate. You know what I mean, there's a lot. I remember as a homeboy, right? Functioning, being in prison, out there in the streets. There was some homeboys I fucking couldn't stand. I couldn't wait till they were on the BNL. You know what I mean? Just keep it at 100, bro. And that's just going to happen in life. You're not going to like everybody. You know what I'm saying? But don't let your dislike for certain individuals or certain groups or certain gangs or even a certain collective allow your actions to change and affect the overall agenda, especially with a big platform, man. I mean, us, we're not a big platform. We're approaching 20,000. We got a little following, let's say. We still have to be responsible and set a positive example every time we do these videos. We have to push a positive message. We can't take any shots towards any particular groups unless they're pushing hates, unless they're pushing trolls, unless they're pushing that BS, unless they're pushing violence, unless they're pushing dope, unless they're pushing this in the community. You know what I mean? Other than that, man, you know what I mean? We want everybody to prosper. We want everybody to have an advancement in life, and that advancement demands change, man. And anybody knows where I'm bringing that from. That's the foundation that you have to have in having different relationships. And if something hasn't been working the way it needs to work all these years, there needs to be a change. Sometimes people have to think outside the box. Some people sometimes have to be the ones that pioneer that change and make an example. And this is where things could be better. But the problem with all this stuff, regardless of what we say about pushing positive change and people being the trendsetters of a new wave, there's always going to be those that hate. There's always going to be haters, man. And that's where that conflict of mankind comes into play with all this, man. There's always going to be haters. Don't let those haters affect you.
Yeah, no doubt, man. There's no reason that, you know, just like these end of hostilities have proved over the last few years, whether it lasts long term, whether it doesn't, it can be done. You know what I mean? Because any kind of things can always spark something. One individual like that. I mean, if you guys don't think that there's been somebody on these prison lines, you know, that harbor those kind of thoughts of any group, and they've still been able to maintain what they've had maintained for quite a few years now, you're tripping, because there is people that harbor those things, you know, that really, really fundamentally feel that they're better or different or don't like somebody just based on what they look like. You know what I mean? They made it happen in prison on level 3s and level 4. It can happen anywhere. You know, you're confined in a small area, and there on the street you can wiggle, ignore each other, whatever. But prison, you're there every day, and they managed to make it work. So if you got a problem with the individual, you got a problem with the individual. I'd leave it at that personally. It's just my opinion. That dude, I know he don't speak for nobody. There, a lot of people are probably just like, fuck, what's wrong with this dude? You know?
And there's a lot more to that issue than what we're talking about, man, because there's certain things, man, we could put out there that's going to offend a whole lot of people, but it's fucking the reality of it, man. You know what I mean? But it's, you know, let's just focus on the positive right now, not the negative.
No doubt. All right, YouTube, man, this is just a little further touch up, man, that groups can get along. You know, don't let individuals, don't take one individual and put him in with the whole group and think the whole group's like that, because it's not true. I mean, not even amongst our own groups, bro. There's people with different ideas, different thoughts, different philosophies. But man, some of them things you got to keep to yourself for the greater good. You know, I don't know. It's a touchy subject, man. That's why I'm kind of like, it's weird to me, you know. But have a good day. Be positive. Don't sweat the petty stuff, and everybody's all right with me. Have a good day. We're out of here. Holler at you later.